I never thought my life would turn into one of those stories you hear about, but never believe actually happens to real people. But here I am, about to tell you exactly how my mother sold my future for a check and a promise. My name is Maya, and until I turned 23, I thought I had everything figured out. I was working as a graphic designer at a small but growing agency, finishing up my master's degree on the weekends and actually enjoying my life for the first time since high school. My younger brother Danny was 16, obsessed with basketball and college applications. We were close, the kind of siblings who actually texted each other memes and hung out without our parents forcing us to dock my mom. She was always the practical one in our family, the planner, the one who made lists for everything and kept our household running like a tight ship. Dad used to joke that she could organize a tornado if she put her mind to it. But that was before everything fell apart. 3 years ago, my father walked out on us. No big fight, no other woman. He just came home one Tuesday evening, told my mom he couldn't do it anymore, packed 2 suitcases, and left. The worst part wasn't even that he abandoned us. It was what he took with him. Our savings account. The college fund he and Mom had been building since Danny and I were babies. Even the money my grandmother had left us. He cleaned out everything except the checking account Mom used for daily expenses. And then he just disappeared. Mom changed after that. Not overnight, but slowly, like watching a plant wilt one leaf at a time. She became obsessed with money in a way I'd never seen before. She'd stay up until 2 a.m. going over bills, creating spreadsheets, calculating and recalculating numbers that never seemed to add up the way she wanted. Every conversation somehow circled back to finances. She started weighing everything in dollars and cents, even things that shouldn't have a price tag. I noticed she'd started looking at people differently, too. When Danny's friends' parents would drop him off in their new car, Mom would research how much they probably made. When my aunt mentioned her neighbor's son becoming a doctor, Mom's eyes would light up in this weird, calculating way. It was like she was constantly measuring everyone's worth by their bank account. But I was busy with my own life, you know. I had just met this amazing guy named Jake at a coffee shop near campus. He was a middle school teacher, the kind of person who genuinely loved his job, even though it didn't pay well. He'd tell me these hilarious stories about his students, and the way his whole face lit up when he talked about them made my heart do stupid little flips. We'd been dating for about 4 months, and I was starting to think he might be the real deal. That's when my mom introduced me to Richard. She brought him up, casually one evening while we were doing dishes together. Oh, by the way, my boss invited us to dinner this Saturday. She wants us to meet a friend of hers. Richard something. I think he works in finance. I should have known something was off by the way she said it. Too casual. Too practiced. Saturday came, and this man walked into the restaurant like he owned the place. Richard was 42 years old, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car, with graying hair and the kind of smile people use in business meetings. He wasn't unattractive, just boring, the kind of boring that comes with being completely satisfied with yourself and seeing no reason to be interesting. He spent the entire dinner talking about his investments, his penthouse apartment, and his vacation home in the Hamptons. My mom hung on every word like he was reciting poetry. I tried to be polite, but all I could think about was how Jake and I had spent the previous weekend building a blanket fort in my apartment and watching terrible horror movies. After that dinner, Richard started appearing everywhere. Coincidentally, at the same restaurant where Mom and I were having lunch. Just happening to stop by her office when he knew I'd be picking her up. Sending flowers to our house addressed to me, even though we'd only met a handful of times. And my mom encouraged all of it. She'd dress me up for these encounters, insist I wear makeup, tell me to laugh at his jokes even when they weren't funny. When I asked her what she was doing, she'd act innocent. He's just being nice, Maya. He's a successful, stable man. What's wrong with being friendly? I kept dating Jake, but I stopped mentioning him at home. Something about the way Mom's face would tighten whenever his name came up made me want to keep him separate, protected from whatever weird thing she had going on. 6 months into this strange dance with Richard, everything came crashing down. I came home from work one evening to find my mom sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She wasn't crying, but her face had this gray, defeated look that scared me more than tears would have. Danny was at basketball practice, so it was just the two of us. "We need to talk," she said, and my stomach dropped. She spread the papers out in front of me like she was laying down a bad hand of cards. Medical bills from Danny's emergency appendectomy the year before. Credit card statements with numbers that made my head spin. A notice from the bank about a second mortgage I didn't even know existed. And at the bottom of the pile, a foreclosure warning on our house. "How?" was all I could manage to say. Mom's hands were shaking as she explained. After Dad left, she'd had to take out loans to cover the gap. Then Danny got sick, and the insurance didn't cover everything. She'd been borrowing from one card to pay another, taking out a second mortgage to consolidate debt, but it had all spiraled out of control. She'd hidden it well, but now the walls were closing in. "I found a solution," she said, and something about her tone made my blood run cold. That's when she told me about Richard, how he'd offered to help when he learned about our situation, how he'd been paying some of our bills for the past 2 months, how he'd mentioned, almost casually, that he was looking for a wife, someone young, educated, and grateful. "Grateful," Mom repeated, looking straight at me. "He said he wants someone who understands the value of what he can provide." I felt like I was going to throw up. "You're not seriously suggesting what I think you're suggesting," I said. Mom reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her grip was desperate, her eyes wild with something between fear and determination. "He's already paid off 3 of our credit cards, Maya. He said if you marry him, he'll take care of everything. The house, Danny's college, all of it. He's a good man. He'll provide for you, for all of us." The kitchen felt too small, too hot. I pulled my hand away from hers and stood up so fast my chair fell over. "You're trying to sell me," I said, "like I'm some kind of property." "I'm trying to save our family," Mom shot back. "Do you want Danny to lose his chance at college? Do you want us to be homeless? This is the only way, Maya. The only way." I looked at my mother, this woman who used to read me bedtime stories and braid my hair, and I didn't recognize her anymore. Fear had turned her into someone willing to trade her daughter's happiness for financial security. And the worst part? I could see the numbers on those papers. I knew she wasn't lying about how bad things were. That's when I realized my entire life was about to change, and I had no idea how to stop it. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my room staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation with my mom over and over in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see those papers spread across the kitchen table, the numbers blurring together into one giant mess that somehow spelled out my future. The next morning, I called in sick to work and started doing my own research. I spent hours looking into debt consolidation, bankruptcy options, government assistance programs, anything that could help us get out of this hole without me having to marry a man I barely knew. I made spreadsheets. I calculated budgets. I called 3 different financial advisors and got consultations. By evening, I had my answer. And I hated it. The math just didn't work. Even if I dropped out of my master's program and worked full-time, even if Mom picked up extra shifts, even if we sold everything we owned, we'd barely make a dent in the debt. The house would still go into foreclosure. Danny's college dreams would still be crushed. We'd still be drowning, just more slowly. I wanted to scream. I wanted to blame someone. But who? My dad for abandoning us. My mom for hiding the debt until it was too late. The healthcare system that charged us thousands for Danny's emergency surgery. Myself for not noticing sooner. Mom knocked on my door around 7. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Did you think about what I said? She asked quietly. I've done nothing but think about it, I told her. I also spent the entire day looking for other options. Her face fell. And there aren't any good ones. But that doesn't mean I'm just going to roll over and agree to this. What followed was the worst week of my life. Mom and I fought constantly. She'd cry and tell me she never wanted it to come to this. Then she'd get angry and accuse me of being selfish, of not caring about Danny's future. Then she'd go back to crying and apologizing. It was like being on an emotional roller coaster that never stopped. The worst part was that I understood where she was coming from. She was terrified. We were about to lose everything. And here was this man offering us a life raft, the only condition being that I had to climb aboard with him. Meanwhile, Richard kept calling and texting. He wanted to take me to dinner, to the theater, to meet his parents. My mom would hover whenever my phone buzzed, watching to see if I'd respond. The pressure was suffocating. I tried to talk to Danny about it, but he was at that age where he thought he was invincible. Just tell him no, he said simply. Tell Mom to figure something else out. It's not that simple, I said. Why not? You're an adult. You can make your own choices. God, I wished it was that easy. I wished I could explain to my 16-year-old brother that sometimes being an adult means your choices aren't really choices at all. They're just picking which terrible option hurts the least. I met Jake for coffee on Thursday. I'd been avoiding him all week, making excuses about being busy with work. But I couldn't keep dodging him forever. He deserved better than that dot. We sat in our usual corner booth, the same place where we'd had our first date. He ordered his regular black coffee, and I got my usual vanilla latte. For a few minutes, everything felt normal, safe. You've been weird lately, he said, not unkindly. Want to tell me what's going on? I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to cry into his shoulder and have him tell me it would all be okay. But what would be the point? Jake was a teacher. He made $38,000 a year. He couldn't save us from this mess even if he wanted to. Family stuff, I said vaguely. Money problems. He reached across the table and took my hand. If you need help, Maya, you know I'm here, right? I don't have much, but whatever I can do. That's when I knew I had to let him go. Not because I wanted to, but because keeping him around while I figured this out would only make everything harder. And there was a small, horrible voice in the back of my head that sounded a lot like my mother, whispering that I was wasting my time with a man who couldn't provide for me anyway. I hated that voice, but I couldn't make it shut up. I think we need to take a break, I heard myself say. The hurt on Jake's face nearly broke me. A break? Where is this coming from? I just need some space to deal with everything that's happening. It's not fair to you to drag you into my family's mess. But I want to be there for you, he said. Isn't that what people do when they care about each other? I pulled my hand back. I'm sorry, Jake. I just can't do this right now. I left him sitting there, walked to my car, and cried for 20 minutes straight. I just hurt the best thing in my life because I was too much of a coward to tell him the truth. That weekend, Mom sat me down again. This time, she had a timeline written out. Richard wanted an answer by the end of the month. If I said yes, he'd pay off all our debts immediately and put a down payment on Danny's college tuition. The wedding would be in 6 months. He's being very generous, Mom said. He's even offering to let us stay in the house until you're married. He doesn't have to do that. How kind of him, I said bitterly. Maya, please. Just meet with him one more time. Have an actual conversation. Get to know him. He's not a monster. He's just a man who wants a family. He wants a young wife he can show off, I corrected her. Let's not pretend this is some romantic love story. But I agreed to the dinner anyway. What choice did I have? Richard took me to the most expensive restaurant in the city, the kind of place where they don't put prices on the women's menus. He ordered wine that cost more than my monthly car payment. And he talked. Boy, did he talk? He told me about his vision for our life together, the charity events we'd attend, the trips we'd take to Europe, how I could quit my little design job and focus on being a wife, maybe take up tennis or join a book club with the other wives in his social circle. You won't have to worry about money ever again, he said, like he was offering me the greatest gift in the world. I'll take care of everything. I smiled and nodded and felt like I was watching myself from outside my body. This wasn't my life. This couldn't be my life. On the drive home, Richard pulled over at a scenic overlook. He turned to me with this hopeful expression that made me feel sick. I know this isn't conventional, he said, but I think we could be happy together. I can give you stability, security, and maybe over time, affection could grow into something more. He pulled out a ring box. Your mother told me you need time to think, but I wanted you to have this. When you're ready to say yes. The ring was massive, probably cost more than my entire college education. It sparkled under the streetlights like it was mocking me. I took the box. What else could I do? When I got home, I found Danny sitting on the porch steps, waiting for me. Did you say yes? He asked. Not yet. He looked at me with these big, sad eyes. You don't have to do this for me, you know. I'll figure out college on my own. I'll take loans. I'll work. Whatever. I sat down next to him and bumped his shoulder with mine. Danny, if there was any other way. There has to be, he insisted. There has to be another way. But we both knew there wasn't. And that night, looking at that ring box on my nightstand, I realized I'd already made my decision. I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. The next morning, I called Richard and told him yes. The engagement announcement went up on social media before I even had a chance to process what I'd agreed to. Richard posted a photo of us at that expensive restaurant, my forced smile looking almost genuine in the soft lighting. Within an hour, I had hundreds of comments from people I barely knew congratulating me on landing such a successful man. My friends from college were confused. Wait, what happened to Jake? One of them messaged me privately. I thought you two were serious? I didn't know how to answer that. So I didn't. Richard's credit card appeared in our mailbox 3 days after I said yes. Just like that, all the debts started disappearing. The foreclosure notice was handled. The medical bills were paid. Danny's college deposit was sent in. My mom cried with relief when the bank confirmed the house was safe. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I felt nothing. Just this strange emptiness, like I'd traded away some essential part of myself. And now there was just a hollow space where it used to be. The wedding planning started immediately. Richard's mother, a woman named Victoria, who wore pearls like they were part of her skin, took charge of everything. She had opinions about every single detail. The flowers had to be white roses, not cream. The venue had to be the country club, not a hotel. My dress had to be from a specific designer she'd already put on retainer. I sat through these planning meetings like a mannequin. Victoria would hold up fabric samples, and I'd nod. She'd suggest menu options, and I'd agree. I didn't care about any of it. This wasn't my wedding. It was a business transaction, wrapped in white tulle and expensive. Champagne. The only thing I fought her on was the guest list. She wanted 300 people. I wanted my handful of actual friends and family. Richard is a prominent businessman, Victoria said, looking at me like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. This wedding is a reflection of his status in the community. It's also supposed to be about two people getting married, I said quietly. She patted my hand in this condescending way. You'll understand once you've been part of our world for a while, dear. Our world. Like I was immigrating to a foreign country. Richard, to his credit, tried to be thoughtful. He'd text me good morning every day, send flowers to my office every Friday, take me to nice dinners where he'd ask about my work and actually seem interested in my answers. The problem was that I could feel the performance of it all. He was trying to make me fall in love with him, but it felt like watching someone follow a script. One night, about 2 months into the engagement, we were at his penthouse, and he showed me the bedroom that would be mine. Mine? I asked. Not ours? He looked uncomfortable. I thought you might appreciate having your own space. At least at first. Until you're more comfortable with everything. Part of me was relieved. Part of me was insulted. But mostly I just felt sad for both of us. Here was this man trying so hard to make an impossible situation work, and here I was, unable to give him anything real in return. Richard, I said, sitting down on the expensive leather couch in his living room. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why me? You could have anyone. Why did you want to marry someone who doesn't love you? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city lights through his floor-to-ceiling windows. I'm 42 years old, he finally said. I've spent my entire adult life building my career, making money, climbing the ladder. I looked up one day and realized I was completely alone. All my friends are married with kids. I go to their houses for dinner, and I see what I'm missing. But that doesn't explain why you'd settle for this, I pressed. He turned to look at me. I'm not good at the dating thing, Maya. I don't know how to be charming or romantic. I know how to provide, how to take care of people. When your mother mentioned your situation, I thought maybe we could help each other. You need security. I need companionship. It seemed logical. Logical, I repeated. That's not exactly the foundation for a happy marriage. Maybe not, he admitted. But I've seen plenty of marriages that started with passion, burn out into nothing. At least we're being honest about what this is. Except we weren't being honest. Not really. Because what this was my mother selling me to save herself. What this was me being too weak or too selfless or too trapped to say no. The months crawled by. I quit my job because Victoria insisted it wasn't appropriate for Richard's wife to work at a little agency. I was supposed to focus on being a proper wife, whatever that meant. My master's degree sat unfinished because there was no time between dress fittings and venue tours and etiquette lessons. Yes, etiquette lessons. Victoria hired someone to teach me which fork to use at formal dinners and how to make small talk at charity galas. It was humiliating. Danny avoided me during this time. We'd always been close, but now he could barely look at me. I knew he felt guilty, like this was somehow his fault. One night, I cornered him in his room. Stop blaming yourself, I told him. How can I not? He said, You're marrying someone you don't love because of me. Because of a lot of things, I corrected. This isn't on you, Danny. It's on Dad for leaving. It's on Mom for making bad financial choices. It's on a system that bankrupts families over medical emergencies. It's on a million things that have nothing to do with you. But I could stop it, he said. I could tell him no. Tell everyone the truth. And then what? We lose the house. You lose college. Mom loses her mind. At least this way, something good comes out of it. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. You're sacrificing yourself. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I'm just making the best choice out of a bunch of bad options. Either way, I need you to not make this harder by blaming yourself, okay? He hugged me then, and I let myself cry for the first time in weeks. The worst moment came about a month before the wedding. I was at the grocery store, just doing normal errands, trying to feel like a regular person for an hour. And I ran into Jake. He was in the produce section, looking at avocados like they held the secrets of the universe. My first instinct was to run. But he'd already seen me. "Maya," he said, and the way he said my name hurt. "Hi." "Jake." We stood there awkwardly, both of us holding shopping baskets, both of us pretending this wasn't weird. "I heard you're getting married," he said. "Congratulations. Thank you. That guy you're marrying, is he the reason you needed space?" I wanted to lie. It would have been easier. But I owed Jake more than that. "Yes and no," I said. "It's complicated. It always is with you?" There was no anger in his voice, just sadness. "I really thought we had something, you know? I was actually planning to tell you I loved you. Had this whole thing planned out." My throat felt tight. "Jake, I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did it anyway." He shook his head. "I hope he makes you happy, Maya. I really do. Because you deserve to be happy, even if you don't seem to think so." He walked away before I could respond. I stood there in the produce section, surrounded by people doing their normal shopping, and felt like the loneliest person in the world. That night, I looked at my wedding dress hanging in my closet. It was beautiful, something out of a magazine. It probably cost more than some people's cars. And I hated it. I hated all of it. But the wedding was in 4 weeks, and there was no turning back now. The invitations had been sent. The deposits were paid. My family's future was secured. I'd made my choice, and now I had to live with it. I just wasn't sure how I was going to survive it. The wedding day came too fast and too slow at the same time. I'd spent 4 weeks going through the motions, showing up for final dress fittings and rehearsal dinners, smiling when I was supposed to smile. Mom kept telling me I looked beautiful. Richard kept telling me everything was going to be perfect. I kept nodding and feeling like I was watching someone else's life unfold. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m. in the hotel suite Victoria had booked for the bridal party. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was just nerves, the normal kind that every bride feels. But I knew better. This wasn't cold feet. This was my entire body screaming at me to run. I didn't run. Instead, I sat still while a team of people did my hair and makeup. I stepped into the designer dress that cost more than a year's rent. I held the bouquet of white roses that Victoria had insisted on. And when my mom came into the room, tears streaming down her face, telling me how proud she was, I smiled. "You look like a princess," she said. I looked like a very expensive doll. But I didn't say that the ceremony was exactly what Victoria had planned. 300 people filled the country club ballroom. The flowers were perfect. The string quartet played all the right songs. When I walked down the aisle on my uncle's arm, since my dad wasn't there to do it, everyone stood up and smiled. Richard was waiting at the altar in his custom tuxedo. He looked nervous, which was the most human I'd ever seen him. When I reached him, he whispered, "You look incredible." "Thank you," I whispered back. The officiant started talking about love and commitment and partnership. I heard the words, but they didn't stick. I was too busy watching Danny in the front row, his face a mixture of sadness and anger. He'd wanted to skip the wedding entirely, but Mom had forced him to come. Now he sat there like he was attending a funeral instead of a wedding. Maybe he was. "Maya, do you take Richard to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The room went silent. 300 people waited for my answer. Richard's hand tightened on mine. My mother held her breath. "I do," I said, Dot, and just like that, it was done. I was married. The room erupted in applause. Richard kissed me, gentle and uncertain. People threw rose petals. Cameras flashed. And I felt absolutely nothing. The reception was a blur of champagne I didn't drink and conversations I didn't remember. People kept coming up to congratulate me, telling me how lucky I was. What a perfect couple we made. Richard's business associates patted him on the back like he'd just closed a major deal. Which, I guess, he had. During dinner, I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I just needed 5 minutes alone, 5 minutes to breathe. But when I pushed open the bathroom door, I found Danny sitting on the floor in the hallway outside, his head in his hands. "Danny?" I sat down next to him, my massive dress pooling around us. "What are you doing out here?" "I couldn't watch anymore," he said. His voice was thick. "I couldn't sit in there and pretend this is okay." "You have to," I said quietly. "We all have to." "No, we don't." He looked at me, and his eyes were red. "Maya, it's not too late. You could still leave. We could figure something else out. With what money? With what plan?" I shook my head. "Danny, it's done. I made my choice. You didn't have a choice. Mom took it away from you." Before I could respond, my mom appeared around the corner. She looked between us, and her face hardened. "Danny, get back to the reception. Now." "Mom, this is wrong, and you know it," Danny said, standing up. "What's wrong is you making a scene at your sister's wedding," she hissed. "Everything I did for this family. Maya understands that, even if you don't. Maya is miserable. Maya is secure," Mom shot back. "She has a husband who can provide for her. She'll never have to worry about money or being abandoned like I was. That's what matters." I sat there on the hallway floor in my wedding dress, listening to them fight about my life like I wasn't even there. And something inside me cracked. "Stop," I said quietly. They kept arguing. I said stop. I stood up, and they both turned to look at me. "Mom, Danny's right. I am miserable. But he's also wrong, because it's too late to do anything about it. So both of you need to go back in there, smile, and get through the rest of this night. Because if I can do it, so can you." Mom's face crumpled. "Maya, I only wanted what was best for you." "No," I said, and my voice was steadier than I expected. "You wanted what was safest. And those aren't the same thing. But what's done is done. So let's just finish this." I walked back into the reception with my head high, leaving them both standing in the hallway. The rest of the night passed in a haze. We cut the cake. We had the first dance. Richard twirled me around the dance floor while everyone watched, and I played my part perfectly. The trophy wife. The grateful girl who'd landed the rich husband. When it was finally over, Richard and I got into the limousine that would take us to the airport. We were supposed to fly to Paris for our honeymoon. 2 weeks in the most romantic city in the world, got in the car. Richard loosened his tie and let out a long breath. "We did it," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "We did." He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time all day. "You're not happy. I'm tired. Maya, I know this isn't a conventional marriage, but I want you to know that I'm going to do everything I can to make you happy. Whatever you need, whatever you want. I want to not feel like I was sold." I interrupted. The words came out before I could stop them. "I want to not feel like you bought me to solve your loneliness problem, while my mom used me to solve her money problems." Richard went pale. "That's not what this is. Isn't it, though? Be honest with yourself, Richard. You knew I didn't love you. You knew why I was saying yes. And you went through with it anyway, because you wanted a wife, and you didn't care if she was there willingly or not. "You said yes," he said, but his voice was weak. What choice did I have? The silence in the limo was deafening. We sat there, newly married, on our way to a honeymoon neither of us wanted, finally being honest with each other. "I'm sorry," Richard said eventually. "I told myself it was different, that I was helping you, that over time we could build something real. But you're right. I knew you were being coerced, and I let it happen because I wanted you anyway." I felt tears slide down my cheeks, ruining the makeup that had taken hours to apply. "Where do we even go from here?" "I don't know," he admitted. "We flew to Paris, but it wasn't romantic. We stayed in separate hotel rooms. During the day, we'd walk around the city like strangers who happened to be traveling together. Richard tried to give me space. I tried to figure out how I was going to live the rest of my life like this. On the 5th day of the trip, I woke up feeling sick. Not just tired or sad, but actually physically ill. I spent an hour in the bathroom, and when I finally emerged, I knew something was different. I found a pharmacy and bought a pregnancy test. My hands shaking so badly, I could barely hold my credit card. Back in the hotel room, I stared at the 2 pink lines and felt my entire world shift again. I was pregnant, and suddenly, everything got a whole lot more complicated.